Prince, who could sing and dance like a dream, who was as colorful as the rainbow, was not the most loved man, but some celebrities could not stand him because of his talent. Their battles with the Purple One were as intense as his shows were grand. Want to know which celebrities had problems with Prince and what it was that they did not like about him? Now, it is high time to focus on the various conflicts and scandals that made Prince a rather provocative personality in the sphere of celebrity. You will be surprised by some of the names and the reasons for them. Prince's controversial personality. Prince was a musical genius. It would be impossible to deny that his impact was present in the music business, but he had a personality that stirred up problems. He was infamous for his eccentric mannerisms and being very reclusive, and therefore was considered quite a character to deal with. This reputation originated from his decision to remain loyal to his style and his decision to personally manage his inventions. Music was always the main focus for Prince, and this meant that no matter what, he was not willing to compromise in this regard, not even for the giants in the industry. The second, and perhaps the most significant aspect of Prince's flamboyant character was his rather revolutionary approach to the ownership of music. Prince had the opinion that artists should own all the rights to their work, a stand that saw him challenge the large record companies. One of the best examples would be his conflict with Warner Brothers Records in the early 90s. Displeased with the label's meddlesome attempts at controlling his music and his inability to put out albums as frequently as he wanted, Prince adopted a symbol that he later called the love symbol as his name. He also used to write the word slave on his face each time he was on stage as a way of protesting against how the label was dictating his career. Some viewers perceived this act as an artist's protest. Others, it was overreacting and problematic. Prince's removal from most streaming services was another controversial move. Prince's decision was considered as outdated as streaming became the new norm for music consumption. Prince wanted to retain ownership and make art inexpensive. He solely released music on platforms that paid handsomely and gave musicians freedom. Prince has been unfriendly to the media since becoming heir. He was notoriously averse to press interviews and rarely gave them. This was also shown in his relationships with other musicians and industry professionals. Some called him aloof, while others called him arrogant. But those who saw him in person would remark about his enthusiasm and his desire to make art as he saw it. These episodes from Prince's career show his double existence. While making him an outsider in the profession, his actions helped him become an artist who would protect his ideals and ideas at any cost. Madonna. Prince and Madonna are two legends of pop music, and they had a rather interesting and rather complicated relationship. Both artists were music giants in the 1980s and 1990s, with different and provocative music and style and immense skills. Nevertheless, they were co-workers for a short time, and they had competition in creative imagination as the main aspects of their relations. Prince and Madonna first crossed paths in the middle of 1980s when both were reigning pop icons. The audience was interested in having these two titans of the music industry together, and in 1989 they received what they wanted, the duet love song for Madonna's Like a Prayer album. Concerning the creation of the song, it was not an easy process, and may be described as the collision of their two characters. Based on the testimonies of other people, Prince had quite a set idea of the music and the sort of production, as did Madonna, and the two did not always see eye to eye. Prince was known for his picky approach to work and recording in particular. He was very much involved in the process. Madonna, for example, was quite rebellious and had her own idea on what should be done with the song. The two parted ways because of creative differences. It was reported that Prince was furious that Madonna was not ready to let him have his way. It also unveiled their attitude towards music and their personality as different beings. Prince was quite a hermit, particularly when not on stage, and was a very private individual. Madonna, however, was not afraid of scandals and attention, and attempted to make her songs and her image the tools to start the discussion. These differences in their personality and in their approach to art made it very difficult for them to cohabit, and so although the combination was effective, the relationship was volatile. Madonna has openly discussed her time with Prince, like in the song above. She describes him as brilliant but tough to manage at work. On The Howard Stern Show in 1994, Madonna labeled Prince, whom she had a brief romance with in 1985, a little troll, and said she never got to know him because they were both so busy. Prince consumed liquids instead of food and was unapproachable, she said. These remarks about competitiveness revealed that the two singers were not close friends as most would have believed. It's fascinating that Madonna has praised Prince's ability countless times. Following his 2016 death, she paid tribute on Facebook, saying he influenced her music and the music industry. She stated on Instagram, "He changed the world. True visionary. What a loss. I'm devastated." Even with their disagreements, they were polite musicians and inventors. Sinéad O'Connor. Among the many known wars in the music industry, the war between Sinéad O'Connor and Prince is perhaps one of the most famous, and this was a very bitter war. This could be traced back to the early 1990s and had grown into a very attractive rivalry that was supported by fans and media. O'Connor and Prince's disagreement started when she sang one of Prince's most famous songs, "Nothing Compares to You." Prince wrote the song and recorded it with The Family, his backing band, in 1985. When Sinéad O'Connor released her version in 1990, it was a hit, and it was charted all over the world to #1. The critics liked this performance very much, and it became one of the most important moments in O'Connor's work because of the emotional and, in some way, rather sad nature of this role. But Prince was not pleased with what O'Connor has done to his song. However, Prince was not happy with the version of the song done by O'Connor, since he felt that she did not understand the lyrics of the song and the way in which the message of the song was delivered. According to some sources, Prince was most offended by the music video and by the style and manner of O'Connor's singing and performing. He felt that her performance lacked the warmth and sincerity that he wished to express. The war began the moment Prince expressed his dislike at what O'Connor had done to his song. He also said nasty things about the manner in which the song was produced and the way she sang it, which was enough to show that he did not appreciate what she had done to his song. That Prince made these comments to the press clearly annoyed O'Connor, that he was trying to pull the rug from under her as an artist. When O'Connor joined the argument to address Prince's critique, things got worse. In interviews and media appearances, O'Connor defended her song interpretation and encouraged Prince to be more flexible. She also hinted on stage that she disliked Prince and that he annoyed her. Media fueling of the rivalry was exacerbated by her harsh responses. O'Connor's 1992 Saturday Night Live performance showed their rivalry. She danced, made regressive gestures at the music industry, and tore a photo of Pope John Paul II in protest to church sexual abuses while singing. Prince's admirers perceived this resistance as an insult to Prince and his music, while others saw it as a protest against the industry. This exacerbated their rivalry. O'Connor and Prince occasionally mentioned their beef in interviews years after it peaked. Prince was more discreet, but O'Connor kept talking about her experiences and ideas. The conflict subsided, yet it remains a crucial aspect of both artists' careers. Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana, the rock and roll guitarist who makes use of Latin music in his compositions, has not been reluctant in saying what he has to say about other musicians. It was in the early part of the 2000s when people became aware of Santana's criticism of Prince's style of music and dancing. This is not just an offhand comment, but a suggestion of the author of major disparity in the perception and execution of art. Santana's public statements on Prince. Some of the things that Carlos Santana said about Prince started coming out during the period when Santana itself was preparing for its own comeback, after the Supernatural album. If any interview or any appearance of Carlos Santana, who is well known for his highly intricate guitar play and fusion of different genres, he would have an opinion on Prince's style. In these statements, Santana was dissatisfied with what he considered as superficiality in Prince's compositions. In the interview conducted with Santana, He pointed at Prince's manner of combining the styles and the energetic dancing, suggesting that it was more like a show rather than music. Santana, who has always been a purist in the sense of the quality of music and its effect, felt that Prince was too flashy, and that he went from style to style and from genre to genre, but the substance of the music was missing. Santana also threw criticism at Prince, implying that the artist was equally incapable of passing profound messages in his work. He said that while he himself agreed that Prince was a great performer, the concentration on showmanship and multi-style might detract from what Santana thought was important: the feeling, impact on their relationship. That Santana took his criticism to the public had significant impacts on his interaction with Prince. Many people considered the comments as a direct attack on them, and rivalry between the two artists was visible. Prince, who was notorious for his hard-working attitude towards his music and his relatively reclusive nature off stage, was said to be unhappy with Santana's comments. This is why, when Santana criticized him, he decided to deal with the situation in an oblique way. He worked more on his music as well as on his concerts, and he did not participate in any public spats. Prince's attitude was rather passive, as he focused on the idea that his work should be enough to silence the critics. The critique also raised questions among fans and the music industry on matters to do with artistry. Santana's comments led to a more general discussion of how much musicians should strive to entertain. Some said they understood Santana's point of view, while others said that Prince's flamboyance and his approach to music and performance was part of who he was. There was no clear effect that Santana's words had on him and Prince. On the one hand, it made the picture more polished, which could have caused some problems between the two artists. However, the criticism was helpful in terms of understanding the different types of music and how performing is used in music. After the events listed above, both Santana and Prince kept working in music in their own ways. Santana wanted to fit in and play emotional music. Prince, on the other hand, kept trying new things and getting into trouble. Finally, reading Santana's feedback and Prince's response gives you an idea of how hard it is to make art and the problems an artist has to deal with when their work is looked at closely. Even though these comments might have hurt their relationship, the case shows that people have different ideas, and that people are always arguing about what real musical ability is. George Michael. For years, there have been rumors of tension between George Michael and Prince, both of whom were some of the most celebrated musicians of a generation. Both of them were unique in their own respect. Michael with his soft pop style of music, and Prince with his diverse style of music. The speculation about their strained relationship is, to a large extent, based on their different public images and attitudes to the music industry. Differing approaches to music and the industry. The careers, the approach to music, and the general attitude of George Michael and Prince were as opposite as it is possible. Michael, who has hits in pop and a great voice, went ahead for a more commercial sound. His music was commercial and classy. It could be enjoyed by any number of people. He was popular for pop songs and a very clean-cut image, which was more of an asset in marketing him in the global music market. Prince, however, was an experimenter whose music was an answer to the standards of the time, and he did not like the idea of compromise at all. His music is a combination of funk and rock, and at times even experimental. Prince was revolutionary in as much as he rebelled against record companies and the authority they had on an artist and his music. He even took to adopting a symbol for a name. He was allowed a huge amount of creative freedom and had an unconventional attitude to both music and commerce, the polar opposite of George Michael. Public comments and interviews. The rivalry between the two artists is well evidenced by some of the remarks that have been made in public domain or in interviews. Prince, whose outspokenness was often not far from the outrage, was quoted in the press as having complained about the commercialization of the music industry and artists who fed into it. Although he did not point at Michael directly, his comments about artists who were too commercial could be seen as referring to Michael. While George Michael was much more diplomatic and rarely got into direct confrontation, nevertheless, he was not entirely negative in his comments about the industry and its future. His remarks about the need to remain ethical in the business and remain true to oneself seem to suggest some impatience with those artists who he may feel were more interested in looks than content. This tension, however, was never spelled out and was a microcosm of the broader conflict of ideologies between the two artists. Michael sometimes talked about his appreciation of Prince's skill during the interviews, but he also mentioned that working in such an industry means that sometimes business and creative vision may cause conflicts. Michael never directly criticized anybody, and it was quite apparent that he did not like Mudari, but the conflict was not obvious in the social relations between the two. Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons, the energetic lead vocalist of Kiss, has always been in the news for his outrageous comments and attitude. His rivalry with another music icon of the same generation, but with diametrically opposite music approach and image, makes this story even more intriguing in the history of rock and pop music. The hatred between Simmons and Prince is not only in personality, it is also in ideas and images of music. Simmons's criticism. For the artists of the 1980s and early 1990s, Gene Simmons had his say as to what he thought about them, and one of the artists he took time to criticize was Prince. In his early years, Simmons, who is a supporter of hard rock music and theatrical performances, was not shy to publicly diss Prince and his flamboyance. He dismissed Prince's music as silly and criticized the musician for being too flamboyant, implying that the singer's ostentatious clothing and the mixed-genre music he produced was all for show. Simmons was particularly offended by Prince's campy mannerisms and the fact that he was able to do rock, pop, funk, and new wave. For Simmons, Prince's attempts at melding rock, funk, pop, and R&B were just that, an attempt, not the real thing. This was so because Simmons was grounded in the traditional rock culture, where music was more of an art form that did not have to subvert the conventions of any certain genre or defy the society norms. Prince's response. Prince's response to Simmons's criticisms was also relatively restrained. As a mysterious person and sometimes rather shy in public, Prince did not openly refute the criticisms. He stayed doing his music and making his artwork rather than engage in a bicker with Simmons. Indeed, such an attitude only added to the myth of Prince as a musician who rarely promoted his music and creativity in any aggressive manner. The audiences of Prince and the public in general were mostly in support of him. It was considered that such characteristics as the ability to freely combine various types of music and the unique attitude towards the stage work were revolutionary. And that is why the audiences and listeners of Prince and Simmons' music got to see the transition in the progression of music in the 1980s, where the crowd favored eccentricity over conformity to rock and roll. Public and industry reactions. The public and the industry had different reactions to the competition. To some people, Simmons's critiques were seen as an attempt to maintain the rock order and ignore the changes that could potentially bring the new order. At the same time, Prince's silence and the album's subsequent success were interpreted as a reinforcement of the work's immortality and the author's concept. Some of the audiences of the two musicians were left with no option but to wonder which of the two visions of music was the right one. Last but not least, the fight of Gene Simmons with Prince is an echo of all the conflicts that took place in the sphere of music concerning the questions of identity, genre, and performativity. Regarding the criticism of rock music which Simmons made, Prince's success and relevance up to this point was enough to demonstrate that popular music was not a dead genre, and that there was always a place for innovation and for expansion. This rivalry between the two giants depicts the struggle between the past and the present in the music sector. However, both musicians contributed immensely to their respective genres. And that wraps up our look at celebs who just couldn't stand Prince, even for a single second. If you enjoyed this dive into celebrity drama, make sure to check out the video popping up on your screen now. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more juicy content.